Well, hi, I'm Ted Klauser, the host of Align It, where we talk about how we align technology with the business platforms and ideas of today. Today, I have a very special guest. Giovanni Sanguily is the visionary founder and CEO of Glasshive, a company dedicated to revolutionizing sales and marketing for IT service providers. With a passion for harnessing big data, AI, and automation, Giovanni has helped thousands of IT companies and vendors transform their sales and marketing strategies, generating over $1 billion in new sales revenue across 29 countries. Before founding Glasshive, Giovanni's career was marked by his innovative approach to sales and marketing, which he honed through various leadership roles in the IT industry. His commitment to making sales and marketing simple and fun has earned him recognition as one of the most sought-after consultants in the field. When he's not driving innovation at Glasshive, Giovanni enjoys exploring new technological frontiers, sharing his insights at industry events, and spending quality time with his family. His dedication to excellence and his multifaceted interests make him a standout leader in the tech industry. Well, Gio, is it okay if I call you Gio?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Gio, it's so great to have you on as a guest.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You have an incredible background. So let me just start by asking, how did you end up where you are today?
Oh my gosh, that story. My lifelong passion was to become an artist. Okay, a comic book artist specifically. You know, I think as a kid I wanted to be a Disney animator. And then as I got older, I got into the comics and wanted to get into comics and pretty much anything artistic. I also wanted to be a professional boxer.
Oh, okay.
So I was getting ready for the 2020 Olympics in Australia, into the Junior Olympics for boxing. And we just had a tragedy in the family, man. Part of my story is that my mom was a victim of violent crime and she was a single mom. So at 16 years old, I had to basically take care of my little sister, me and my brother, and we huddled together and started working. I still stayed in school. I would, on Fridays, work on my artwork and submit it to the different comic book artists, to the different comic agencies, Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, all these things. And it took me a couple years to break in, but I finally got some responses and got in, which is great. And then I had other jobs on the side because the way that works in comic book world, you only get paid by the panel. So you have to have a lot of hand speed. You start as an inker and you work your way up. Starving artist is a real thing.
Wow.
So while I was doing that, I figured I was working on some big projects and I'm like, it's only a matter of time till I take off. But between now and then I got to live. Yeah. So I had a friend of mine at a grocery store tell me, hey, you want to work at an IT company? You want to do sales? I'm like, IT company? Isn't it just a guy that comes and fixes your computer?
Right.
Right.
It's like the old SNL skits, right?
Exactly. They're like, there's a company, these people. Yeah. They're like, yeah. So I got hired on board just literally as a business development rep. The company was one of the first pure play managed service providers in the country. And the owner, back at the day before the PSAs and before the RMMs, were using HP OpenView and IBM Tivoli to deliver help desk for the enterprise customers. But we had 600 break fix IT companies. There were time materials. He wanted to sell the company. He said, we need 100% recurring revenue. Our job was to call the existing customers and tell them, hey, we want you to move over to this all-you-can-eat contract, flat rate IT, explain all that. And that was my start into the whole industry and the career.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so give me a time frame. Is that late 90s? I'm trying to put those products together on the HP.
You're looking at 2001, 2002.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, there's so much to talk through there. First, I have seen some of your drawings at your office. It is unbelievable. But tell me a little bit about you mentioned you had a breakthrough. What did that look like as far as the comic book side of things?
So I was submitting, my favorite comic book characters, have always been like the Boy Scout characters. Superman.
Okay, yeah.
Captain America. Okay. Can do no wrong. I don't know why. I love those characters. But I think I pulled more towards DC always, just Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. I would have taken a job anywhere, It didn't matter where it was, as long as I can get in for drawing. It just so happens that DC was actually giving me feedback on my work eventually. They would redline it, tell me to work on my backgrounds or tell me to work on my perspective, whatever. Eventually, I got an opportunity because there was an artist that was supposed to take on a project, and they were going with him. He backs out last minute to work on something else. There I come in as a neat free agent to come and do some inking. So I got to work with some really good, prestigious, comics that end up selling a lot of copies as a part of that team. And it's funny because my first introduction to technology and collaborating with the different artists was through conference calls. That was it. There was no video. There was nothing like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, I got to work with some of my great heroes, but I never got to meet them in person. They were just all email exchange.
Wow.
So to think about that, and I still felt happy for that. Today, nowadays, I would have been meeting them face to face. We would have done a Teams or a Zoom or something, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, first off, that's cool. That's just cool. But let's talk about the new era of business, right? So you take a unique perspective in the sense of you're got a comic book, an artistic background, and you're bringing it into a space that deals with zeros and ones. Talk to me about what that looked like, and how did you align that artistic talent and desire with those zeros and ones?
All right, so the new era, I'll put a pin in that for a second to kind of show you my angle, I guess. I feel like a lot of this was destined for me. I don't know why. It's been a journey that I don't know. We just connected. Yeah. But I'm making calls first, week on the job. The owner was he's a former captain for the Army Rangers.
Okay.
So he's like 300 calls a day. That's what it takes, one of those. And we had a spreadsheet. We'd go through it. My first little artistic thing in the world of IT was just color coding my leads. Okay. Blue was healthcare. Green was accountants. Okay. That was it. And then I don't know. I've always figured I like to work my way around it. Like, how can I hack the process to be more efficient? And I was fascinated with the technology that I was supposed to be selling and my ways in. So I started to interview the CIO, of the company. And I remember asking, first thing I ever created for this industry, I'm like, explain to me virtualization.
Nice.
What is it? Mm-hmm. He gets on the whiteboard and starts going, imagine a computer with all these resources, and you divide it and chop it up, and it can act like multiple servers now, and we do a VM and a hypervisor, blah, blah, blah. Tech talk, we lost everybody already. But because I didn't have enough in-depth technology advice or technology expertise, I simplified the message just by nature, right? I can only know what I know, but I did it in such a way where I took a piece of printer paper and I drew out my own little infographic.
Okay.
I scanned it in and spammed everybody. I didn't know, man. I didn't know the rules.
Right.
I go in there, I'm taking it, I'm scanning it, and I scan everybody. I'm like, hey, this is the benefit, right? You can consolidate your technology footprint. You can manage multiple VMs. You can consolidate your server space, all that kind of stuff. And man, I got a lot of leads. It was my first little email marketing. I got a lot of calls back, and I just never turned back, man. It kept the flow going. Eventually, they were asking me what I was doing, and I told them all these little drawings I was making and scanning them in. They're like, "You're doing marketing."
Right.
And I'm like, okay. Right. So
right.
I grew up like that. I became the director of sales for the organization within a few months. Within a year and a half, I was the VP of sales and marketing. And then when the time the company sold, I was the CRO.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it was a fun little ride.
Well, what's one of the things that you really resonated, that you learned from that experience that you then took into your next chapter of life?
I think just resourcefulness. I think a lot of sales and marketing folks don't get credit for being creative. We don't, you don't really think about that when you think about a salesperson. But everything a salesperson does is just figuring out a way to close, right? Most business owners go, hey, you hear your leads, go turn that into money.
Yes.
What they do, how they divide the leads that they're getting, how they prioritize a Rolodex, how they approach, in marketing, you may do one good email campaign a week or every 2 weeks. These folks are doing hundreds a day, right? And what is happening in between all that is fully creative and left to their own devices in a lot of ways, because IT people don't understand that world. So they're just kind of left on their own. So I think I learned to be resourceful. I learned to there was no really convention or rules, which I liked, and I could make this my own. So my own passion and my own excitement and my own fact that I wasn't an IT expert helped me communicate in ways that other people would see it. They saw it just like me. They related a lot to the message and they could understand the business value. So then I realized then that, being more simple, not being too techy, learning how to simplify the message is your key to winning a lot of business.
So you're kind of like that kid that breaks stuff on the keyboard because they didn't know what they're not supposed to do.
That's right.
I love that.
That's right.
I love that. So you left the CRO role at some point.
Yep.
And tell me, was Glasshive next?
No.
Okay. So what was next?
All right. So we started an association in conjunction with Intel and Microsoft called where we were helping other MSPs adopt this business model.
Okay.
Of course, Microsoft went from selling you disks with Microsoft Office licenses to a cloud. Mm-hmm. So they like the fact that we were teaching businesses to pay monthly for IT. That's a stepping stone for the cloud for them, okay?
Sure.
Intel was about their whole thing was the vPro chip. And that was supposed to be the chip of the MSP, okay?
Right. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, you remember?
I remember.
So we were going and we went across 15 countries just hosting these events, these boot camps, helping them understand the business model. And I was teaching the sales and marketing side of it. And that was kind of my exposure at mass to the industry. And I was able to help a lot of folks along the way. From there, I took a role. I was traveling like crazy. And when I had my first child, I said, I want to be a present dad and I want to just stick around. So I took a job as a VP of worldwide marketing for Intel. They had a product. We won't get into that. It was the App Up Small Business Service. Really good idea, but it lacked a lot of things to make it grow. In that time frame of working for big corporate office, I was still young. Okay, I'm 28 years old.
Wow.
So, I just was excited. I liked the hustle and the pace of small business. My heart was there. You also could be a lot more disruptive and had more freedom. So all these folks that I had worked with in the past were like, hey, Gio, can you design this for me? Can you create something? Can you help me with content? And I said, sure. I had a lot of time on my hand at Intel. So I started doing that on the side. And I eventually when I started traveling again with Intel, I got so much response that I had a friend of mine fulfill the artistic work while I did the content. 6 months later, we go look at the revenue, like, oh my gosh, we did some good revenue. Wow. There's something here.
Yeah.
So I left that. I left Intel, started my business in my garage in my home, and the rest is history. That was my agency was born right then.
That's wonderful. And I have seen some of your work. I mean, it's incredible. We talked about the comic, but I've seen your agency work too. Yeah. I mean, what you do is impressive, and I love the idea and the creativity you put behind it. I would love for you to just share with those listening the story of Glasshive. I heard it from you of how you came about the name. Yeah. And I think it's a cool story. I'd love for you to share with those listening.
All right. So, I understood that my customer base is more technical, which means sales and marketing is just one of those things that is kryptonite to them, talking comic book talk, okay? They need to learn. They built their business based off referrals, right? We're a relatively new industry. All of a sudden, it got competitive overnight, the whole boom, and they're trying to figure out how to maintain some of that growth with all the competition. It's a saturated market. So, they know they need to invest, and they don't understand the length, the process, how to convert, the whole way of the pipeline. So a lot of times for them, they either get, tired of making the investment and understanding what's coming back, or if we overcomplicate things in terms of like what's available through third-party reporting, they don't understand how to equate the ROI to it. So what I decided to do was I said, you know what? We need a system that can aggregate all these different reports and all this data, right? Because data is in the veins of our customers, and present it in a way that they can understand it and that is tied in with their major systems. All MSPs use something called PSA. You already know what that is. Their line of business application. But I said, if I can put the data in there and I can make it palatable, we got something. So at first, it was just a web-based dashboard, okay, with APIs driving all this stuff. and they saw big numbers, and they were like, okay. They were like, this is good. I want to do more. Slowly but surely, they wanted to interact with the data, right? But we were just this dashboard. And I started Frankensteining this sucker because I was running the agency and letting my software developers just go and tweak it. It got to a point where I didn't recognize it anymore. So Frank, what are you doing here?
Right.
So I get with all my customers, I had this big conference call. About 300 of them were on the call. And, I said, hey, what do you guys want us to do? They're like, we could really use, there's so many applications and tools to help us be better at delivering service and to make us more profitable, more billable, all that kind of stuff, more efficient, but nothing to really help us on the sales and marketing side that belongs to us. And I said, okay. So being a creative guy, I decided I wanted to build this platform that can do that would natively tie in what they're doing and be that sales and marketing powerhouse tool, just like they had for service delivery. I was in Hawaii. As I was thinking about all these different things that are going in it, I'm on a hike. I see a beehive, and I'm just kind of a inquisitive dude, man. I don't know. I just look at it, and I start looking up bees. I'm like, they're the most perfectly functioning society on Earth. No other species does what they do at their level of efficiency. And I'm like, that's interesting because you can't see inside the hive. It looks and sounds like chaos. You get too close, you get stung. That sounds like a small business to me.
Right. Absolutely.
So I go, all right, we're going to go ahead and do something. I want visibility, since our thing was all about data, visibility into the perfect process, into the outcome of, instead of honey is money.
Yeah.
Right.
Whoa. Okay. Okay.
So the Glasshive was born from that. That name was born from that idea.
That is excellent. Honey is money. And also Frankenstein. And what is Frankenstein? And I've never heard that before.
Well, I think it happens to everybody. Everybody's got Frankenstein technology. If you think about it, and this is kind of a good segue into the new era, these IT companies, or these businesses gave birth to the IT companies, okay? They wanted computers in their office because, typing the computer is more efficient than writing on paper. And they were like, hey, you kid, technology? Yeah, I want you to build the network here. You do it, and they build it, and then they say, cool, do it for my friends, and IT companies were born.
That's
right?
Frankensteining.
Well, that's more of just the start. But then what happens is since it was order driven like that, as hard drive ran out of space or something new came into the market like a firewall, they started adding these different components. You're almost adding body parts to this network that's Frankenstein over time. Think about it. The bone-colored equipment turned into black-colored equipment, turned into equipment in the cloud.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
I love it.
Frankenstein.
That's a great term. You've heard it here first.
Yeah.
I think as we talk about alignment, how do you help the typical MSP that is focusing on running their business? They want to put in energy into sales marketing. Maybe it's a fear. Maybe it's the owners doing it. How do you begin to align the importance of something like a Glasshive, some sort of tool like that, into the business and say, we're going to focus on driving this for outcomes? What's your message? What's your tip for that?
My goodness, that strategy's evolved over time. But I will tell you, okay, I think to win the hearts and minds of my customers, I tend to focus more on how marketing can help them internally with their existing customers. Okay. Because if you take marketing and that term off the pedestal, it's just communication. And the exact definition is rich media communication, using pictures, words, text, audio, video to communicate with your customers in a more perfect way. And it's to simplify, help get a message across. What I love about this is, if you do a video or you do any type of podcast where you're talking about a topic, it never gets tired of doing it perfectly, 24 hours a day. Right? So I go, you are all fighting for differentiation. You're trying to separate yourself from your competition. Let's create a really great communication strategy to separate yourself from your competition and create a better customer experience for your customers. The way that you onboard them through marketing, the way that you communicate your new technology that you're adopting and you're reselling now, the way you communicate those outcomes. If they make it a part of their internal culture where everyone in the company knows how to communicate effectively, then they've embraced and adopted marketing because they've adopted communication. And all you need to do is just tweak it and turn that message outward to net new prospects. and you will succeed.
So you said something there that really caught my attention, that it's much larger than even the MSP space. Communication, even when you were at Intel or any CIO or director of IT, has to communicate. And maybe their internal users are their customers. So are there similar techniques that they could use from a communication standpoint?
Oh, you bet. So think about this, right? You've been in the technology space for a long time. What percentage of your business would you say is relationship based?
100.
And what relationship functions without good communication?
0.
Okay.
Right.
So,
and I would say most of our challenges in our history have been poor communication, that we've stumbled on not communicating properly.
There you go. And that happens to every business in America. When they're growing, it's harder to communicate. Things fall through the cracks. When you're having somebody who's having a bad day take a ticket and communicate improperly or be too short and tone is not good digitally, you have all these things, right, that kind of affect communication, and one miscommunicated item can escalate into losing a customer. Sometimes lack of communication, your communication can be great, but you've been there. You get a call from a customer that says, hey, I need you to come on down and help out. I bought a new VoIP solution. I need you to go help get it installed. But you sell VoIP. You're like, hey, what happened?
Yes.
I didn't know.
Yes.
Right. So we're not communicating that all the time. So, I always employ their entire company to understand that they're in a customer facing role, no matter where you're at. And you got to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and you're communicating well. Okay. You tie that in with the things that are available today. There's AI with great language models that can help you communicate. You got great technology, 4K video. You have all these great assets that can really aid you in creating perfect communication. You can automate it. Therefore, these things that fall through the cracks don't, and you have a really good organization that communicates very well in a branded, unique way that encapsulates your vision around your philosophy around customer service, your vision of the future of technology, which we're going to talk about today. All that stuff resonates, and it's a part of your company's culture to communicate this way. Highlighting your people. I love this about IT. People don't realize it. Computers don't reach out and support your customers. Your people do.
Yes, true.
Why are they being hidden with stock photos? That's what your clients are investing in.
That's such a great point.
The infrastructure. I would love to see a business owner that has their nephew or their cousin or whomever managing their IT match the millions of dollars you invested in your infrastructure to watch their environment and monitor their environment better than you could. But all those beautiful monitors and that knock that you have back at the office is a secret for most people, and they don't realize that it's a great communication tool to your dedication around infrastructure, making sure you're providing stellar service.
Mm-hmm. That's so powerful. Well, how do you know when it's the right amount of communication? How much is too much? Is that a thing? Can you communicate too much?
You can communicate the wrong things too much.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Give me an example if you don't mind.
I think I'm going to use a boxing analogy. Ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
You're not going to swing though.
So when you advertise too much, okay, and all your communication is, hey, you buy from me, okay, that comes off very one-sided and you lose the relationship. Okay. There is a value exchange. I always talk about it with marketing. Okay. There is a value exchange. And I always, in order to stand out, think about email marketing. We're so saturated, right? Try to always think about how to add 10 times more value, give out 10 times more than you expect to get back.
I love that.
All right. How do you do that in an email? Well, number one, your internal documentation you've created over the years is the one thing that makes you different. That's designed around your philosophy of what stellar support is, and it's been growing over 20 years of dealing with customers, call it, right? So those checklists that you do to maintain quality standards are actually some things your competitors can't replicate one for one. So if you turn your internal documentation into external documents, you remove the fact that you have to fill out a form to get it. Just learn to give it away. Okay, I call it giving out jabs. A jab will open up the power punch.
Okay. So
if every time they interact with you, every time I get something from Align IT, it's a great resource, super helpful. I could just download it. They don't make me fill out forms. I like this brand. it opens them up for a very opinionated advertising sales pitch from you because they've already gotten value. It's kind of like, to put a bow around it, have you ever been maybe at your house and trying to fix something and you go on YouTube to figure out how to fix it? You find somebody that gives good advice. You're like, okay. A couple of months later, something else, you find the same guy giving the good advice. After 2 or 3 of those, you're like, I'm going to subscribe. This is some good content in here.
Yes.
It's very much the same for our business. When they start to open themselves up to you because they get so much value out, they're ready to reciprocate that value when it comes time to make a buying decision.
How do you deal with copycats? Like, what you're basically putting your playbook out there. Is that a concern?
No, because the copycats are always going to run out of legroom. Marketing is all about consistency. Whoever is the originator of that content's got more tricks up their sleeve.
I love it. That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, we're nearing the end of our time together. And so one of the things that you've talked about is really the importance of communication. So just kind of throw out a nugget for those that are listening of what's one way you can start today to be a better communicator about the right information.
It's a good question. First thing you can do to be a better communicator, is make sure that whatever your core communication is, if your job is to sell XYZ, develop what I call your ammunition. Create marketing materials, create videos, create as much as you can within reason. I wouldn't worry too much about the quality or 4K or anything. Some of the blemishes, they're called beauty scars in marketing. It's more relatable when it's raw.
Nice.
Nice. So you want a balance of all that stuff. But if you can empower your team to communicate with these type of materials, you no longer get Johnny or Sally's version of your vision. They're now presenting and sharing your vision. In this case, Align IT's vision or Glasshive's vision. It's not being diluted by that person that doesn't know all my backstory or doesn't know the philosophy or maybe not share the same passion. So, when you think about it that way, think about the proper perception and vision of your company being presented and not being diluted by someone's lack of industry experience or lack of experience of selling your products.
Brilliant. So for any MSP that's listening and they wanted to hear more of you or learn more about Glasshive, how do they find you?
You guys can find me on LinkedIn. Just Giovanni Sanguily. Happy to connect with all you guys. And I have a couple groups where I share a lot of content. Glasshive.com. If you want to go visit that and take a trial, test out our AI. We got a proprietary channel language model that helps you communicate IT in simple and fun ways to your customers. Lots of great content that our AI will redesign for you. The good thing about being an artist, I can teach AI how to do some stuff too. It's pretty cool.
Hey, I love it. We could have another discussion about whether or not you think AI is a threat to artists or not, but that's for a different day. And for anybody that needs technology coaching or wants to visit about our solutions, you can reach me at pcatechsolutions.com.